Hi, this is Carl. Welcome to another SMB Community Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ken Dwight, who is the virus doctor. So, how do you get to be a virus doctor?
Well, it really kind of came unexpectedly. I started specializing in malware back in 2002 and I was like the Paul Revere of the IT industry. The viruses are coming, the viruses are coming. Because back then, the average user and even the average tech thought that viruses were still written by bored kids that didn't have anything better to do.
Right.
And that's about the time that the bad guys figured out how to monetize their efforts. And so I started preaching to mostly business owners and speaking to chambers of commerce and networking groups, that sort of thing. And I got an engagement on a radio show. A guy here in Houston calls himself the high-tech Texan, Michael Garfield. So I was on his show and introducing me. He said, "We've got the virus doctor here with us today." And that's kind of catchy.
Exactly.
And one thing led to another. I ended up trademarking the name, and that's been how I've been known professionally ever since.
So, do you have an MSP business, or are you just helping to train people on malware?
Well, I don't have an MSP business, but I do have a break-fix business. I'm a one-man shop, and have been doing this for a long time. And so I'm still in the trenches. I'm out there doing not just malware removal, but all the usual stuff, updating software and helping advise on what to buy, setting up networks, the usual troubleshooting things. But my overall business model is about 75% training and 25% break fix.
Okay. And so who is the audience for the training?
It's techs. It's my main course, and I have several, but the main one that I concentrate on is what I call the Virus Remediation Training Workshop. And that's a really intense 2-day, actually 2 half days, about 16 hours of content in all with some pre-recorded stuff as well. But it's for geeks, for people that do IT support for a living, in terms of dealing with infected machines. Not wiping and reloading and not doing a bunch of scans, but actually finding and removing the malware in what I call the smart way, with the least negative impact on the client.
Right. So is this a live event in Houston?
Yes.
So folks come to Houston, they do the 2-day workshop.
Yeah, and I actually schedule three of them per month. One of them here in Houston in my office, and then 2 online at different times of day.
Wow.
So, I schedule it for 4 hours each of 2 consecutive days, and I have one that's scheduled for noon to 4 Central Time, and one that's scheduled for 6 to 9 in the evening. And so the noon to 4 is good for people in the U.S. and North America. The 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 in the evening is good for us night people and people that have a day job or don't want to take away from their paying customers. But it's also good for the Aussies.
Right.
6 o'clock in the evening here is 9 o'clock tomorrow morning there.
Right, exactly. So what's the smart way? Tell me about that. So because I think most people just like, oh, let's just restore to yesterday. So,
and if you can, that's a decent solution. But usually it's more involved than just a system restore for yesterday's, but sometimes that works, and depending on the type of infection, it can be. But the short answer to your question is really what the workshop consists of is finding the malware and ripping it out by its roots, instead of running a bunch of scans and hoping for the best, or doing a wipe and reload or nuke and pave, as it's sometimes known.
Right.
And so the whole purpose of the workshop is to educate people as to where the stuff hides out, how it gets there, how you can find it, keep it from coming back.
So, and is keeping it from coming back mostly a matter of making sure you have all the patches, fixes, and updates?
No, that's more a preventive step than keeping it from coming back, because usually when it comes back, it's because a scan has found and eliminated the obvious symptoms, but it hadn't gotten rid of the underlying cause. And so once a machine is returned to service, then it resurfaces, maybe not right away, but pretty soon after.
So do you run like tools from Semantic or Trend or somebody, or do you like go digging in the registry and you know where to look for certain?
The registry. And the only scanning we do and the only tools that we use that are that type of tools are pretty much after the fact. I break it down into the 4 steps: identification or detection, identification, neutralization, then removal. And so fairly early in the game, we've got the malware identified and removed. or neutralized, and then use tools, mostly the Malwarebytes tool set, to find and remove all the pieces. Because even though there are only a few pieces that are actively running the executable itself, or DLLs, or files like that, there may be dozens or hundreds of other pieces that are just left behind. They're orphaned. They're not really hurting anything, but it's best to clean them up.
Right.
And I recommend the Malwarebytes tool set for that. Not the Malwarebytes free scanner, but
right. So you do these several times a week. There must be a huge audience for this.
There should be. The biggest problem is getting the word out.
Right.
But I actually did the first one almost 10 years ago. April of 2009 was when I did the first workshop. And of course, it's evolved continuously since then. But and just to a little correction on what you said, I do 3 per month, 3 workshops per month.
Oh, per month. Okay. Well, it's still a fair number of.
It's a lot. And I limit the workshops to 10 attendees in each one. So each attendee can ask questions, and it's fully interactive. And I need to come up with an on-demand replay availability. It's so interactive that I've hesitated to do that, but there are more and more people that want to take it and can't really take 8 hours out of their week to sit there, and I understand that.
Well, my experience with the classes that I teach is that if you offer it as a recorded class, there's almost no demand for that. That's been my experience. And it may be the topics that I'm doing, but I think people like having the instructor there available to ask questions. They can probe on something that maybe they're having a specific issue with, or if it's not clear to them what's going on, they can dig in a little deeper.
Yeah, and the other thing that happens, as you well know, is the good intentions. And they've got it, they paid for it, and I'll get to that tomorrow, or over the weekend, or tonight, or whatever. Right. And I don't want to just take people's money and not give them what they paid for.
Right. So with these classes, do you give hands-on examples, like here's a machine that we know to be infected, or do you just have like screenshots? Or
generally, I have screenshots. I do have one of the recordings that's available is of me cleaning up a badly infected machine. But anytime that you try to take a new malware sample and put it on and show the process, there's so many variables and unknowns, and it's better to have something pre-recorded and be able to go back and edit it and cut out the downtime and that sort of thing.
Right. So how do you keep up on new stuff that's coming out? Do you just stumble upon it and figure it out, or do you subscribe to something that tells you, like, here's the latest stuff the bad guys are putting out?
Well, and that is one of the most frequently asked questions. How can I possibly keep up? And of course, the answer is I don't sleep. But I'm on multiple subscriptions, newsletters, e-zines, podcasts, webinars, conferences, and so I stay up with the people that are kind of on the leading edge of detection. I don't make any claims to be a malware researcher myself. That's beyond my bandwidth and my interest level, frankly. But I am on good regular speaking terms with a lot of the anti-malware vendors. They know who I am. They kind of keep me advised. And one of the things that works out very well is the people that attend my workshop have direct access to me. And so if they have a problem that doesn't respond to my methodology, or they can't figure how it fits in, they can call me. I can answer their questions. I can remote in. And right now I have something over 400 graduates worldwide. So that's 400 extra sets of eyes and ears and hands that I have out there making me aware of what they're seeing.
Right. Oh, that's a good point.
And as I say, I'm in the trenches myself, so I'm still seeing the same stuff, and I get called in, whether it's a ransomware issue or something that just is beyond the typical pop-up and the tech support scammer, that sort of thing.
Right.
But,
well,
it's continuously changing.
Yeah, I was going to say, at some point, you can't keep up simply because this stuff, it modifies itself sometimes and then finds new ways to spread itself. And, it's very scary. I think when we look at the future of artificial intelligence, I think viruses are going to be like 10 times worse than they are now.
Well, and the thing that a lot of people don't realize is how much of this, I mean, in the old days, we talked about the script kiddies that just got some piece of code and modified it a little bit. We've gone way beyond that now. The malware creators are making most of their money by selling the exploit kits. They
Right.
package it, it's malware as a service or ransomware as a service. And so most of the actual infections you're seeing were not done by genius programmers. They're done by people that paid a few bucks and got a starter kit. And they're paying the author a percentage. It's almost a franchise model.
That's amazing. And the weird thing is that it's like you have to trace money, right? And so you would think that it would be easy to trace the money and find these people. But they're all overseas, and it's super, super sophisticated.
Well, and of course, that's where Bitcoin really made its mark, is being not completely anonymous, but certainly non-refundable and mostly non-traceable. And so the cryptocurrencies are a big part of the whole malware market these days.
Right.
And you still got the traditional, the rogues, the pups, the fake antivirus, and the fake hardware diagnostic that are just asking for your credit card, and the tech support scammers and stuff like that. So the Bitcoin and the big dollars are mostly with ransomware. But then you've got the CEO fraud, and there's just so many ways that the bad guys can make money these days and teach other people how.
Right. So what are you seeing as the most common thing that people in small businesses are having to deal with?
Ransomware is a big part of it, and the fake tech support scams. There's still a lot of people that the screen pops up, it's warning, 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 this is Microsoft, and you call this number, and it's amazing how many people fall for it. That's a whole industry all to itself.
Right. So now that's more about social engineering, right? That basically you got to train people. Do you do anything along those lines?
I do. And in fact, one of my latest offerings is actually a 1 hour pre-recorded course called Cleaning Up After a Tech Support Scammer. And because typically the good guys get a call and say, well, I've already paid this guy I've got a lifetime service contract now. Are you going to charge me too? So that's out there. And there's just, it seems like no limit on the number of variations on ways that this can be twisted. And as you say, it's a lot of social engineering and tricking people into doing things that if they really thought about it, they'd know better.
Right. So I don't know if you saw yesterday, I posted a thing on Facebook that was a screen capture of an email that was in my spam folder. And the subject line was actually reversed. It was like you hold it up to a mirror, right? Like your account has been suspended. And I'm like, who clicks on that? Like, who would open that? It's beyond my comprehension, because you have to like stare at it to figure out what it actually says. So, and I don't get the point of it, right?
Well, and of course, so much of this is still just a spray and pray type campaign. They send out thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of them, and if 1 or 2 or 3% click on them, then they've made their money.
Yeah, that's true too.
There was actually one that went out a few years ago. It was put out by one of the anti-malware companies that basically said, don't click on this link. And about 20% of people click on it.
Okay, so there's no hope for us, right?
No. For a certain segment of the population, no, there's not.
Man, that's amazing. So do you give technicians words to use with their clients that basically says, yes, you have to pay me. Yes, you don't want to call them an idiot, but yes, you clicked on stuff you're not supposed to.
I prepare them for the idea that some clients may be reluctant to pay since they've already paid somebody else.
Yeah. Well, hey, not my problem.
Right. And the reality is that in the case of the tech support scammers, usually they are doing it the old-fashioned way in terms of taking credit cards or debit cards, and that will be reversible.
Right. Oh.
Credit card more easily than debit cards.
Oh, yeah.
But if you've paid $300 or $600 or something like that, or call your credit card company, they'll recognize you will not be the first one to have called and asked for.
And so how do those people avoid jail, right? I mean, if you're collecting money through a credit card, at the other end is a bank and a number and, a tax number. And
they're mostly offshore, and so our laws don't apply to them. And And a small enough percentage of people get the refunds. They're still making a good living at it.
Right. So when you look at the, let's say you clean something up and there's all of this, leftover code and so forth, where is that code? Is it sitting in a file and folder, or is it inside the registry, or
all of the above?
Where is it?
Yeah, there's some in the registry and some folders and files scattered around. Now, you hear the term fileless malware, which is a relatively recent phenomenon, and it's a little bit of a misnomer too, because obviously at some point there's a file. But
right.
The concept is when that malware infects a system, it generally gets buried into the registry, and then the file that did it gets deleted. So that's one of the reasons that scanning with the traditional anti-malware products is not going to find some of the more sophisticated types of malware. And for that matter, you need to know exactly where in the registry to look for it, what it looks like, and what to do with it.
Right. So it's interesting because, when you go to the shows, there's all of these people selling all of these great products to, and they make a big deal like, oh, we have heuristics for all of this kind of stuff.
And artificial intelligence.
Yes. But at the end of the day, stuff keeps getting through. Is it because we're not protecting our machines well enough in the first place?
That's part of it. And then part of it is that there is no 100% protection. Obviously, you and I know, and most good techs know, that just running an antivirus program is not going to be all the protection you need. An internet security suite with the other stuff that comes from a software side helps, but it really requires multiple layers: hardware, software, procedures, policies, awareness, and there's no one easy button that solves it all.
Right. So when we move to 5G and we take the firewall and we move it up to the cloud, because now we have enough speed to do that, do you think that's going to make things better or worse in terms of letting stuff get in?
I don't think it'll make any significant difference. I certainly don't think it'll make it any better. I don't think it can make it any worse.
So, all right.
It just moves.
Right.
you still got the same pieces there in different places on the board.
Right. And do you see malware that actually infects cloud storage, or is it all still local?
It's mostly still local, but ransomware certainly can encrypt cloud-based files,
right.
depending on how they're accessed. Generally, if you're using a cloud-based backup, which I certainly recommend, those are usually insulated enough that they will not get encrypted by ransomware. But if you're just using a cloud drive, then that's directly accessible, and so it's accessible to the ransomware also.
Right. Well, I did some research last year. Both Rackspace and Jungle Disk say theoretically you can encrypt anything on our drives, right? That you have the right to do that, and so the computer has the right to do that, and so if you get infected, it could happen. They said, both of them said, they haven't seen it, but they expect that they will. It's just like, it's one of those things, it's a matter of time.
Yep. And of course, ransomware sets out trying to encrypt anything it can that's attached, certainly including an external hard drive that may be the only backups somebody has. And there again, if you have a OneDrive or something that's cloud-based but directly accessible, that's just as vulnerable.
So do you have processes for cleaning all that up as well?
Yeah, and here again, I have a separate anti-ransomware or ransomware cleanup video that's it's called Strike Back Against Encrypting Ransomware. and part of the issue there is that you really have two related but separate problems. One is the malware itself that did the encryption, and the other is getting the data files back. And getting rid of the infection is really easy. Pretty much any anti-malware product will get rid of the infection that
right.
did the encryption. But getting the data files back could be a completely different issue. So,
right.
And what I talk about in that recorded workshop or webinar is how to figure out what your options are when you're dealing with encryption. Because really, if you get hit, or if one of your clients get hits by encrypting ransomware, there are three possible outcomes. One is you might be able to decrypt the files for free. There are some free decryptors out there, and so you need to figure out whether there is one and whether it's going to work and how to use it. That's not likely, but I've had personally several cases where I've been able to do that. The second possibility is, distasteful as it may be, paying the ransom will usually result in being able to get the files decrypted. And I never recommend that, and nobody does. You don't want to support
Right.
the criminal enterprise, but from a pure dollars and cents standpoint, in fact, one of the things you'll be hearing me talk about in the next webinar I do that you're going to be a participant on is a city in Georgia recently. They got hit by ransomware, and it's reported they paid $400,000 in ransom.
Man.
Which sounds pretty extreme, but if that's the actual number, and we don't know that for sure, they haven't admitted it, but that's the speculation. Part of the reason for that might be the experience of Atlanta. And of course, Atlanta got hit almost a year ago now, and the ransomware demand was $50,000. We're not going to pay that. And so far, they've spent, that they'll admit to, over $17 million. So again, from a pure dollars and cents standpoint, which is a better use of taxpayer dollars?
Right. Well, and so what's the time saving? Because if you say that that your technique is better than nuking and paving, does it save time as well?
Oh, sure, a lot. And what my workshop consists of is a methodology and a set of tools, some of which are proprietary, that were developed only for graduates of this workshop. But bottom line, following the methodology, my guarantee is you will have the system clean, malware-free in less than 2 hours. And the actual number is usually less than an hour. 40 to 50 minutes is pretty typical. Less than that if you're talking about an SSD system.
So do you have a checklist that's basically do this first, this second, this third?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. I suspected, but you know.
Yeah. In the workshop itself, there's a workbook that comes with it. It's right now 136 pages. So there's a lot of content. And when I get into the methodology, I start off with a one-page flow chart that lays out everything you're going to do in dealing with these. Basically break it down into the 4 categories of malware: encrypting ransomware, rogues and puffs that are very visible and obvious. Then the traditional malware, the viruses, worms, Trojans, that in a lot of cases are staying hidden, and just even knowing that you're infected is the challenge. Followed by rootkits. And so you deal with each one of those in that sequence, and then when you're done, it's clean. And so I got the flow chart, then about 40 pages worth of stuff that we talk about in the workshop, followed by a one-page appendix. It's more of a text form of what the flow chart said.
Right. So can all of this be done remotely, assuming you can get into the machine?
Mostly. There are very few cases that needs to be on-site, hands-on. Obviously, if you can't boot, or if you've got a blue screen issue or something more extreme, then it won't. But I still do a lot of malware cleanup, almost all remotely.
Right.
If it happens to be somebody in Houston that wants to bring the computer in, or that I have a working relationship with, then sure, I can do it hands-on or on-site. But generally, it can all be done remotely.
Would you guess that most clients have malware they don't know of that's just sitting dormant? And
yes.
Would they benefit from basically a once-a-year cleanup?
Absolutely.
So, because that seems like that would be a service that you could sell to clients as a way to, like, hey, let me clean up your machines. And you could almost say, you know, you got 10 machines. If I find nothing, I won't charge you anything. Knowing that you're going to find something.
Right. And I'll go a step further than that, because some of my graduates have actually set up a fixed price virus repair service. And same thing, we don't fix it, you don't pay. And they're making a good living at that.
Well, especially if, you know, it saves you time over completely reinstalling the operating system and all the software and all, you know, all of that. So that can make a huge difference. Is there a point where you still have to nuke and pave?
The reason I hesitate is because I'm trying to think of how to word this tactfully. I have not done a nuke and pave since I started teaching these workshops, which is 10 years.
Right. So I will say it. You don't have to say it. If you are competent at what you're doing, there's no reason to nuke and pave.
That's, I won't say that 100%, but generally speaking, that's my philosophy.
So, all right. So, but for everybody, when I reach, I'll say me, when I reach the limits of my ability, then I nuke and pave. So,
Well, and of course, the other part of this is that realistically, especially if you're on a time and materials or a break fix basis, you can't really charge a client more than a couple of hours of your time for malware cleanup. And so I've had plenty of cases where people spent 3 weeks on this and still haven't got it fixed. And that's crazy. You're losing money. In fact, one of my taglines is, are you tired of losing money and clients on virus repairs?
Exactly. So you mentioned your podcast. So you have a podcast that's only for graduates of your program.
I do. People that take the workshop, there's obviously the workshop itself and the training that comes with it and the materials and the tools and that sort of thing. But there are a lot of other things that are included, one of which is a monthly webinar that is exclusively for graduates of the workshop.
And is it free to them, or is there an ongoing?
It's included for 12 months. And a lot of my graduates come back. In fact, I just did one last week, and 2 of the attendees were people that were taking it again, one for the 3rd time.
Wow.
So that's one of the great things about people that attend the workshop. They're the ones that recognize how much things have changed and how much they can't learn it all and keep up with it on their own. And so, in fact, I have one guy that's been through it 5 times now. Once a year, I can count. And he comes to Houston for it. He's from out of town. And so the thing I'm leading up to is the people that attend these workshops are raising their hands and saying, I want to be good. I want to take good care of my clients. I want to be profitable in my business. And so that's a great bunch of people to work with.
So tell us your website so we can put it down below.
Great. It's thevirusdoc.com, thevirusdoc.com.
Thevirusdoc.com.
Uh-huh.
Very good. So do you think that most of the technicians who are out there should be spending more time educating themselves on the viruses versus just like, if it's a minor part of their business, maybe they don't really need to?
Well, I think that they should be educating themselves, period. And obviously, I have a bias toward virus malware cleanup and removal. But one of the things that I really don't emphasize enough is that in this workshop, a lot of it is basic troubleshooting. I say basic. It assumes a pretty good working knowledge. But out of the 8 hours of content that we do live, about 3 hours of that is on the registry. So it's setting the stage, and obviously most techs have been in the registry. They know what it looks like and how to do basic stuff. But there are a lot of things they've never had occasion to need to know about.
Right.
And so we talk about things like that. And one of the things I love, in fact, one of the lady that was in the class the other night was able to apply some of the stuff that we talked about in the registry to a completely different situation. And that's part of it. We talk about a particular scenario and how you do something and say, when this comes up, think of how else you can apply the same information. And she did a beautiful job of that. So
excellent. Very good. So folks should get a hold of if they're interested in this, and they can go to your website. Is there anything else that you'd like to put out there before we go?
Well, I could talk for hours about it, but we've done a good job of summarizing and wrapping up kind of what it's all about and my position on it, and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you, Ken. Thanks for being with us, and with luck, we'll have you back again.
Great. Thanks, Carl, and I'll see you soon.